Recruiting's always more fun to talk about when you have commitments to talk about. And this is another one that proves that Wisconsin, they don't rebuild on the edges, they reload. All that and more in today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan Herring's your host of Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for making this your first listen every single day. And we are here to talk about Badgers. If you like the show, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a review, all that stuff that you hear on a bunch of podcasts that sometimes you just kind of skip over. Doing this show, doing this podcast, I can tell you it's awesome to get nice reviews. And it's even awesome to get the feedback where I could be a little better. So I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate everyone taking the time once again to join the show as we continue just to build the Badger community. Today's show is also brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Let's get into it, guys. Teased at the beginning, we have another commit. Number 7's into the Badgers 2023 recruiting class, Jordan Mayer. Not a gigantic surprise, right? We've talked about him a couple times. We had John Garcia on the show, talked about him. He's a guy who was committed to Boston College. And then almost essentially as soon as Wisconsin offered, he was kind of like, maybe I want to rethink this a little bit. And he rethought it, and he rethought his way to Madison. So Jordan Mayer committed. He tweeted, couldn't wait any longer. No other place like Madison. I am officially home. Recruitment closed with a Badger emoji. Yeah, it's perfect. It's great. We like him a lot. I like him a lot. Everyone I've had on the show likes him a lot. 6'4", just to recap, he is a 6'4", 235-pound defensive end / outside linebacker. I'm sure he's going to start in Madison as an outside linebacker. A lot of his clips are with his hand in the dirt. He's out of Pennsylvania. He's a mid 3-star, actually kind of a low to mid 3-star. If you were to put him in this looking at where he's at in the current class with his ranking, he's one of the lower ranked kids in this class, but I think he's underrated. And again, I try to tell you guys all the time, I keep it real. Like, if I think somebody is a 4-star, I'll call it like it is. If I don't think they are, I'll call it like it is. He's underrated as a low to mid 3. I think he's more of an upper 3-star type guy. When you watch the film, and we've talked about this before, but now that we have him kind of in the fold, so to speak, and listen, nobody's ever really in the fold until they sign on that dotted line. Like, we know how recruiting works, but he seems pretty solid. And, he is a guy, it's interesting because he's a guy that has the physicality, like an Alec James isn't the right comp, but like a guy who you could put on the edge and he could really hold up. He shows that on film. He pushes offensive tackles back into the backfield. Very active, but he's a guy that also has the burst and the athleticism to get around the edge. So this is definitely a player who, he's going to come in and he has the potential. And this is all we're ever talking about with any recruit, from the 5-star to the 2-star. It's all about potential, right? But he definitely has the potential to be a 3-down linebacker, run stuffer, set the edge, and then get after it on 3rd down. I really like that type of versatility. A guy who really realistically could play every down in the base and in the passing packages for defense. Also love the motor. We've talked about it before, but he's a guy that when the play gets by him, he tracks it down. In the last show I said it's almost like some of his clips. It's almost like watching a lion chase down a gazelle in the open field. Like, he doesn't give up on it. I really like seeing that type of motor, that type of physicality, ability to play in space a little bit. He can move sideline to sideline. I don't think top end wise, this is not a, if we're being honest here, and this is only what I've seen and what I've seen on film, he's not a Zack Bond twitchiness. He doesn't fly off the edge with a ton of speed. It's a little slower. It's more of the physical. And again, I'm only comparing it to Badger type of linebackers. I'm not saying he's going to be TJ Watt, but he's more of that blend of power and some speed, right? Watt was obviously incredible, and it took him a couple years to really become the player he was in Madison. But he's that type of prospect. If you can picture, a guy on the edge, maybe. And again, I'm not saying now maybe as a floor, Watt is certainly that type of ceiling. Maybe as a floor, more of like a Dooley type, a guy who's physically can set the edge, but doesn't maybe have freakish athleticism. I think he's more athletic than Dooley, but, it's a good player. And Dooley was a starter. Dooley was a really good player. And I'm just throwing some basic comps out there for you. But this is a really good pickup. For starters, I trust Bobby April. Everybody should at this point. He's proven to be not just a great recruiter, but a great evaluator of talent. And this is somebody that they saw, they liked. I think the film's really good. I think he's underrated. I think he should definitely be more of a high 3-star guy. Probably not a 4-star guy, just because, again, I think he lacks maybe a little bit of the top end athleticism or a little bit of the top end length that the 4 and 5-star outside linebackers have. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he plays hard, he gets after it, plays to the whistle. Really good prospect. He had another official. I believe it was West Virginia, if I've got my people lined up. So, there are other schools after him. Not a lot of blue bloods in this recruitment, but again, this is one of those spots where you trust Wisconsin in this spot. And the other thing I want to talk about here, and I teased it at the beginning, is we're at the point with outside linebackers specifically where Wisconsin doesn't rebuild anymore. They just reload, right? So you get a guy in like Mayer, and you're going to put him kind of in the crock pot for a couple years, right? You're going to let him marinate for a couple years. You just look at the guys in the pipeline, and it's just one after another, after another, after another. And this is an example of a guy with his physicality, his skills, and from what we've seen on film, the intangible of just, I love football, I will go get the football. This is a guy in 2 or 3 years where they're just going to unleash him, and it's going to be the next Badger linebacker, right? And you've seen that. I saw a quote, this was a couple years ago, from an NFL scout, and he was talking about, I think, Alex Van Ginkel. So this is a couple years ago, but he said, that's just another in a seemingly, and this is just a random quote from a random scout. I don't even remember who it was. It was in a magazine. And he said, it's just another in a seemingly endless line of Wisconsin linebackers. And the quote always stuck with me because it was at that point I realized the pipeline's built, right? Like the pipeline is built in Madison for linebackers. And when you bring a guy in, now he's just expected to be that next kind of cog in the machine. And when you look at a guy like Mary, he checks all the boxes that he probably will be that. So I really like the pickup. I think it's a great pickup at this point in the cycle. I trust the outside linebackers. I trust the defensive coaches as a whole. And he's a guy whose film backs up what, intrinsically we trust on the defensive side anyway. So big time pickup for me. I think it's a great one to get him in the house. It's nice to get an outside player into this class. Really, Tyler Jancy is the other linebacker in the class, but he's an inside linebacker type. So it's nice to add a building block to the outside as we continue to kind of progress through June and into July in the recruiting cycle. So, yeah, I think we're going to stop there on Mayer. We're going to have more on him this week. I'm going to get a couple guests on. We're going to chop it up even deeper, but I really like to commit. Long story short, to wrap it up, I think he's physical. I trust the defensive staff. So it's a great pickup out of that official visit weekend. Coming up, guys, we're going to talk about some of the other official visitors, both from the 3rd and from the 10th. The other official visits they have coming up, maybe get a sneak peek or try to talk a little bit about where these other guys are in their process. How close are they to maybe making their decision, and who are the biggest competitors for, some of the players that we're really after at Wisconsin. But first, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all of your sports betting needs and information. They have online Vegas games, blackjack and casino type games, roulette, all that stuff. You can play poker, and it's a place where you can go and get all your sports betting needs and information. Also, just sports news in general. The website is incredibly easy to use, and it's not just sports. As I said, there's other games you can play there, and it's all the sports you can think of, including futures, props. Great place if you think you have a read on something coming up. I have put some money on futures and lost. I thought I had a great read on the NBA this year. I had the Bucks Suns in the NBA Finals, so both of those went up in smoke. But it's a great way to have fun, test your sports knowledge, play some futures, check the latest props. Go to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. Bet online where the game starts. Thank you guys again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every single day. Really appreciate it. When you're done here, go check out Ultimate NBA Mock Draft, which actually starts June 16th. So this week it's starting. Locked On NBA Big Board Draft Experts. This is the best place to go as we continue to gear up for the NBA draft. Remember, Johnny Davis is in this, a bunch of other Big Ten guys too. So go check them out. And let's jump into this next segment. So I want to just take a second and kind of try to recap, not everybody, but recap a lot of the big targets that we've had as official visits and where are they at in the recruitment. What are we looking at for a timeline? Who's the biggest competitors? And let's start with the cream of the crop, right? Let's start with the blue chip outside linebacker that maybe inside linebacker that Wisconsin's been after for the entire process. Tackett Curtis out of Louisiana, out of Manny High School. And so this weekend he had an official visit to USC, right? It's a 3-horse race. That's from Tackett Curtis's mouth. It's Wisconsin, USC, Ohio State. So the good news, right? LSU tried to get into it at the end with Brian Kelly down there. And if anyone's seen Brian Kelly's commitment videos where he's like dancing with, it's so cringe. I guess it works. I guess, but it is so cringe. It's terrible. So luckily, for us and probably for Tackett Curtis, they didn't fall for the Brian Kelly LSU charm. So LSU tried to get into it. They couldn't. From Tackett Curtis's, from their own mouths, it's Wisconsin, USC, Ohio State. He's already visited Wisconsin. This weekend was the official at USC. I'm sure it was great. All right, you got to put yourself in the shoes of these kids. And if you have an official visit to USC and they're rolling out the red carpet, I'm sure that's awesome, right? It's going to be a great visit. And he's going to have his official to Ohio State as well. I'm sure that's going to go exceedingly well, because you can't almost mess it up. Great facilities, they're going to roll the red carpet, great food, stay in an unbelievable hotel, see the history of these programs. So I expect good things to come out of all of these. I expect the Curtis family, the coaches, the insiders for all these programs to rave about the visit, to say it went really well. And it's going to come down. This feels, guys, like a very much a coin toss type recruitment. And it doesn't seem like anybody has a great feel for where it's going to go. He raved about the Wisconsin visit, both on Twitter and to insiders. Said it was great. He's only ever had great things to say about Wisconsin, but now it's a waiting game. So he's done with USC, Ohio State coming up, and then it's decision time, and we're going to see where we're at. If there's good news to think about, there wasn't a flood of crystal balls. Crystal balls are future cast, whatever it is, and you can see those. Those aren't behind paywalls. And I will never purposely, by the way, I want to be super clear on something. I'll never purposely bring anything from behind a paywall into this show. I try to be very careful with where I get information. I'll never try to do that. But the crystal balls, the future cast, that kind of stuff, you can go to 0-3, which is a new recruiting site. They have their predictions out there. All that is not behind a paywall. And the good news with this Tackett Curtis visit, it doesn't seem like there's been a bunch of people that have rushed to say, oh, he's going to USC. Because sometimes you can read the tea leaves on this stuff. The fact that it didn't happen is good. So that's Tackett Curtis. Let's jump into Khalil Tate, Khalil Tate remains my favorite, one of my favorite prospects in this class that we have a shot at. Again, just to recap, he's the kind of 6'3" safety, defensive back, athlete prospect, could also be receiver. Great film, violent, big physical guy. Visited Wisconsin on the 3rd, said great things about us. Also has an official visit coming up to Iowa on the 24th. That's the big one, guys, because this is probably going to be a Wisconsin-Iowa battle unless some big school jumps in. And Iowa has a history of developing defensive backs, and we don't. So that could be a tough one. It would be painful to lose him to Iowa, though. So Tate is one of the top of the board targets that we have. He has an official visit coming up on the 24th to Iowa. After that, Khalil Tate is probably in decision mode, and we'll see where he goes. Ashton Sanders. This one's really interesting to me. So Sanders is a defensive lineman, and I want to make sure a lot of you guys maybe know who he is off the top of your head, but I always want to make sure just to give the quick background in case somebody doesn't have that in front of them. So Ashton Sanders is a 6'3", 295-pound defensive lineman, defensive tackle out of California. It's down to Cal and Wisconsin. That's it. So he took the official visit to Wisconsin on the 3rd. He just got done with his Cal visit on the 10th. Okay. And he already set his official or his commitment date. It's Tuesday. It's this Tuesday. It's the 14th. So by the time you're listening to this, it might be tomorrow. It might be today. So set your calendars. Let's check it out on the 14th. Ashton Sanders. His nickname is Champ, by the way. Ashton Champ Sanders is picking between Wisconsin and Cal. What does that tell you? Well, it tells you he's an academic kid, right? Cal Berkeley, UW-Madison, 2 great educations. He's a California guy, so there's going to be a local pull there to Cal, but obviously Cal cannot compare athletically to Wisconsin or for playing for this defense. So, it's 2 great choices. And again, with recruiting as fans, we sometimes tend to get a little nasty. I'm just speaking in general, right? Fans in general, when a kid picks a different school or a rival school, listen, Cal's a great choice. If you can go to Cal Berkeley and play football in California for free, yeah, that's awesome. So it's going to Wisconsin, so we're going to see which way he goes. This one feels like a 50-50, maybe a little Wisconsin lean just because of the defense, because we set the bar in the first official visit. So we're going to find out this week where he goes. A couple other guys I want to touch on quick. Mikhail Gardner, just an awesome, powerful defensive line prospect. We had him up here on the 3rd. That's an uphill battle, guys. He's got visits coming up, Texas, Oregon. Most people seem to think this is an Oregon. Oregon's got this one, at least is in the pole position. and they still have their official visit coming up. So Mikhail Gardner's got a couple officials coming up. He would be a big time get off the West Coast, but I don't think we're going to be able to land him, guys. Joe Crocker, a big 3 to 4 star offensive tackle out of Tennessee, someone we've talked about on the show several times, 6'6", 295 pounds, big frame, really raw, right? He definitely on the film looks like he's leaning on people a little bit. He doesn't really get down in leverage, but he's a big physical body. I think you're going to get him in a college weight program, but 30 pounds on him, and he's just going to go to work. So he's got to visit Mississippi State was this weekend, and then Michigan State on the 24th. Most people we've talked to, John Garcia, who we had on the show, said this is probably a Wisconsin-Michigan State battle. So he's been to Wisconsin. Unless Mississippi State can throw a wrench in it, they had him this weekend. It sounds like it's going to be up to that Michigan State visit on the 24th, and it's going to be between us and him. So I would expect something maybe towards the end of the month for Joe Crocker. That would be a big-time get out of Tennessee. It sounds like we're going to battle our old buddy Saeed Khalif at Michigan State for him. 2 more guys I want to touch on quick. Zack Ortworth, the tight end, 6'5", 220-pound tight end that we had on campus. He's got visits to Minnesota this weekend, and then he's still going to Pitt in Iowa. He's going to be in Iowa, the same time as, as Khalil Tate. So Khalil Tate and Ortworth are both going to be in Iowa on the 24th. Again, if there's 2 or 3 positions Iowa's really done well with, tight ends, defensive backs, offensive linemen, so it's going to be tough, for our brand at times to pull. Well, not offensive linemen or tight ends, but, so Iowa can definitely sell, though, the tradition there. The last guy I wanted to talk about, and I left him at the end on purpose, is Lincoln Keinholz, the quarterback. Obviously came on campus for the 3rd. Visited Wyoming this weekend, and then he's got a visit next weekend going to North Dakota State. He does have a visit scheduled for Washington on the 24th as well. So, but most people tend to think this is a Wisconsin-North Dakota State battle. Washington just picked up a quarterback commit as well. So it's probably going to be us or North Dakota State, unless Wyoming somehow blew his socks off, which you never know. So North Dakota State is the local school. It doesn't sound like Wisconsin has this wrapped up yet. So we definitely need to see where that one goes. Again, probably expect some type of potential decision end of June. This is definitely the quarterback one of the board. Really nobody else even close. So if this doesn't go Wisconsin's way, I don't know where Paul Chris, Bobby Ingram are going to turn. All right, guys. So that's not everybody, but I wanted to kind of recap a little bit of the bigger prospects, where they're at in their process. And I want to let everyone know, don't freak out that none of these guys have committed yet. Wisconsin had the first official visit. It's early in the process, and now you have to play a little bit of the waiting game. It's unfair for both the players and for expectations of the recruiting staff to have locked a bunch of these guys up immediately. They want to take their official visits, and quite frankly, they should take their official visits, right? Think about if you were a parent for one of these kids. You would want them to go see all the other schools, right? To compare at least 2 or 3 of them. So don't stress too much that we haven't, and I say we as Wisconsin. Wisconsin hasn't pulled in a lot of these guys yet. They've only had 1 or 2 official visits for the most of them. So that's where we're at. Keinholz sounds like us in North Dakota State. Mikhail Gardner sounds, he has several visits left. Probably an Oregon guy. Khalil Tate, big-time defensive back prospect, us in Iowa. Iowa on the 24th. Joe Crocker, Michigan State on the 24th. That's a big one for the 6'6", 4-star offensive tackle. And the other one is Ashton Sanders. That's the one. Oh, Tackett Curtis again, visited USC. Ashton Sanders, again, is going to commit this week. So let's see which way he goes. Coming up, guys, that's kind of that recruiting roundup. Coming up, I want to talk about a little bit of the feedback. So I ranked all the Big Ten coaches, and I got a ton of feedback. I got feedback on Twitter. I got DMs. I got messages from friends on my phone. A bunch of comments on the YouTube channel. I'm going to respond to the 3 biggest kind of disagreements people had with my ranking and tell y'all why I disagree with those disagreements. All that's coming up more after a word from our sponsors. Hey, guys, thank you for coming back to Locked On Badgers. Once again, always appreciate everybody joining in on the show. We're going to continue building the community, continue getting great guests. I encourage everyone. I haven't fully built out yet, but we're building a Discord channel where we're going to have community. We're going to have discussion. It's free. It's easy to join. And we're going to do some giveaways on there just to kind of say thank you, as a way of saying thank you to everyone who's started to help build the community around this show and around the Badger fandom. So a lot of words there. Check out the Discord community. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Now let's get into the 3 biggest. So I ranked the Big Ten coaches 14-1. And again, I want to start off here, and I said it in the show too, but it's super subjective, right? it's just my list. I'm not saying that is the list. It's just my list, but it is something I thought a lot about. There is reason and rationale behind it. And if you disagree, it's awesome. Like, I love the Discord. I love the back and forth. Like, as long as it's respectful and it's cool, like, yeah, let's chop it up. I had some really good talking points thrown my way, and it made me sit back and say, yeah, maybe I didn't hold Coach A and Coach B to the same standard. So I'm going to get into the 3 biggest disagreements that I saw from the comments, the messages, the DMs, the all the YouTube stuff that people had with my list. The biggest disagreement was probably Ryan. I had Jim Harbaugh over Ryan Day. And again, I was super clear on this, though. It's not based on what they've done in the Big Ten. I was looking at who's the best coach and what's their resume, right? Harbaugh's resume is, again, this is subjective, but in my opinion, is better. Ryan Day has never had to rebuild a program. He's never coached in the NFL. He's had a couple years at Ohio State that are incredible. 100%, all credit due. And I also pointed out, I was very clear on saying this is not a knock on Ryan Day. He's been incredible, but he's done it at Ohio State, taking over Urban Meyer. The point I made in the show is if you have, a Maserati, I'm not giving you a ton of credit for lapping the Fords and lapping the Chevys. You should be incredible in the Big Ten at Ohio State. And he's done that. And that's credit to him, by the way. Like, he's met those expectations and in some ways exceeded them, but he's at Ohio State. Harbaugh, if we're looking at resume, we're really asking the honest question, who is the best coach? Not the best coach in the Big Ten, not the best coach in the last 3 years. Harbaugh's been to a Super Bowl. He's been to NFC Championship games. He's rebuilt Stanford. Like, he has won everywhere he's gone. And he's had to do it in places that are much more challenging than what Ryan Day's had to do. And if you disagree with that and you say that's false, then you're just not being intellectually honest. Now, you could say, I don't care about what he did at Stanford. That's fair. Like, again, there's no one perfect way to rank these coaches. If you just want to look at what have you done for me lately, Ryan Day's been better, period. No argument. But I don't think it's such ancient history to say, not that long ago, Jim Harbaugh took over a bad 49ers team and brought them to the Super Bowl in 2 years. Like, that's and coaching the NFL and coaching at college are incredibly different, right? And to be able to master both of those things and do really well. Now, he's won at Michigan, right? He brought them to the playoffs. He won at San Francisco, the 49ers, and he rebuilt a Stanford team that was pretty terrible. There's nothing on Day's resume that compares to that. And it's not like Harbaugh's 87 years old and that happened 4 decades ago. So I hear you. If you think Ryan Day's better, there's an argument for that. No doubt about it. I wouldn't agree based on the criteria that I'm looking at these coaches with. The lens I'm looking at them through is, what is their resume? What does their actual resume say about them as a coach? Not what does the last 3 years say. So no issues if you want to take Day over them. I disagree based on my criteria, but here's what it is. No issues. The second one, I got a ton of comments, and I got on some back and forth, respectful, good back and forth on YouTube about Fitzgerald. I had Fitzgerald at 9 out of 14 in the Big Ten. I said he is the most overrated coach in the Big Ten, and I had a ton of pushback, ranging from it's really hard to win at Northwestern. He, won a Big Ten West title. He won the West in 2020. He's been incredibly consistent, runs a good program, hires good staff. So a lot of reasons people gave me that Fitzgerald should be 4, 5, 6, even top 3-ish I saw. So let me just say this. The biggest disagreement I would have with the feedback I got on Fitz is the fact that there's this notion that I think is incorrect, that Northwestern is like impossible to win at. So you have to shower roses on a guy who wins 55% of his games. I just disagree. I don't think Northwestern is. Listen, Northwestern's hard. It's challenging. Northwestern is not Furman. It's not Rutgers. I mean, even Rutgers, I think there's stuff there. It's in the Big Ten. They just rebuilt their facilities. It's a great academic institution that allows you to target a certain type of player. And quite frankly, Gary Barnett, who was in the Northwestern head coach, won 2 Big Ten titles at Northwestern. The guy that took over Gary Barnett that preceded Fitz, Randy Walker, he won a Big Ten title. Fitz hasn't won a Big Ten title. The 2 coaches preceding him in 14 years won 3 Big Ten titles at Northwestern. Tell me again you can't win there. I mean, the previous 2 coaches did. Fitzy hasn't won a Big Ten title in 16 years. Now, he's been more consistent than those guys, right? His floor has been higher, but his ceiling's been lower. And I'm sorry, if you don't win a conference title in 16 years. You can't be a top 6-ish coach in the conference. If your hallmark is consistency, you can't have 2 of the last 3 seasons where you've been 1-8 in conference. I'm sorry. Like, it doesn't work. Again, this is only my opinion here. It doesn't work. He hasn't been consistent enough lately, and his ceiling hasn't been high enough. Now, he should get credit. Listen, I think the Big Ten is full of good coaches. So me ranking him 9th seems low, and it is low. I grant that. I don't think he's a terrible coach, though. I really don't. At some point, I just feel like the media needs to stop fawning over him until he actually wins something, or is going 7-5, then 8-4, and then 3-9, and then 7-5. Is that really the sign of a great coach? I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. So maybe he'll prove me wrong. Again, just my list. I respect everyone who says, hey, it's a really hard place to win. I disagree. I think it's challenging. I don't think it's any more challenging than a lot of other non-blue blood schools, quite frankly. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with Fitz. I get the argument that I have him too low. I just don't think the ceiling's there. And quite frankly, if he's going to be a high floor coach, you can't go 1-8 in conference multiple times. The last one I got, and listen, we all have biases, right? It's important that we acknowledge the fact that we have biases. We have blind spots. Every single person has blind spots. I'm a Wisconsin guy. I had Paul Chryst 3rd, and I had several people say, I don't think so. And I can see the arguments, right? People said, well, you're kind of critical of what coaches have done at past stops, and you're not talking about Paul Chryst at Pitt. Yeah, that's fair. Now, Paul Chryst inherited a Pitt team that had cycled through, I think it was 3 head coaches, and that Pitt program he inherited was a disaster. But I don't want to make a ton of excuses for him. He was a 500-ish coach there. Pitt fans weren't exactly happy with the way he built out his staff, with the way that program was going. They didn't exactly mourn him leaving. So I think it's a fair point. You know, he came back to Wisconsin where there's a blueprint, and he's kind of continued it. And I should point out the fact that he wasn't great at Pitt. And the other thing with Chryst is his X's and O's, his in-game coaching has left quite a bit to be desired. So I can see the argument that 3 is too high. You know, obviously every Wisconsin fan can point to that Minnesota blunder where he sent the punt team on and had a penalty and took them off. I'm just gross end of game, negligent coaching. And that alone might be enough to knock him out of the 3 spot. So I get it. I think the reason I have him there, the reason I had him there is when you win 72% of your games at a program. I mean, that's a level of consistency. I mean, it's the Pat Fitzgerald thing where he hasn't won the big games, but he's actually kept the floor really high, whereas Fitzgerald hasn't kept his floor as high. Chryst needs to win some big games, though. And if he goes another year where, you know, he loses to Michigan, I'll just say if he loses the 2 or 3 toughest games on his schedule again and doesn't win the Big Ten West again, yeah, he's going to have to drop down. Because Wisconsin in the West shouldn't go 2 or 3 straight years without winning the West. So that's what I have. You know, I certainly appreciate everyone jumping in with their comments. I think Harbaugh's resume is better than Day's. I still think Fitz is overrated. And I see the argument from an X's and O standpoint and from a ceiling standpoint with Chryst being too high. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you still disagree with me on those. Totally cool if you do. Again, this is not the perfect list. It's just my list. And a bunch more coming up this week, guys. Appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll talk more later. Thank you for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every single day.